We begin with a look at this, the apple, specifically the Red Delicious apple. America's best-known fruit owes its very existence to a Pike County, Missouri nursery and orchard that this year celebrated its 200th anniversary. Our first visit to Stark Brothers was in April of 2016. Ornamental plants were being delivered to Stark's Retail Garden Center, which has been in operation since 1984. But the foundation of the company was built 2 centuries ago on apples. Stark Brothers Chief Marketing Officer Ken Lane.
If you go back to 1816, there was this westward migration of getting across the Mississippi River that was going on in the country. There were land grants given. Each acre of land you were given, you were required to put a fruit tree up. So kind of a good business model for James Stark if everybody needs these fruit trees.
In 1816, James Hart Stark and his family settled on land that was part of the Louisiana Purchase, and that 5 years later became part of the state of Missouri. Stark had worked in his father's orchards in Kentucky from the time he was 14 and was very skilled in propagation methods. So when he went west, Stark brought with him a bundle of apple scions like these. Apple scions are apple stems containing leaf buds. And through the grafting process, which we'll explain a little later, Stark's nursery business was born.
There's all these forks in the road of where, we could have gone away. And I think the funniest one is that James Stark had, I think, 14 kids. The 12th one was the one interested in the business. None of the others. And if he hadn't have done that, it might not have happened at all.
From the start, the company's core values revolved around innovation, producing quality fruits, maximizing yields, and maintaining good relationships with both workers and customers. An early result of those values was the development of this mechanical tree digger, Stark's game changer in the nursery business. By 1855, a railroad line was running through the town of Louisiana, Missouri, where Stark's orchards are located. It allowed the grower to ship goods to markets in St. Louis and Chicago in less than 24 hours, a critical development for an expanding business. Large packing houses were constructed on Stark land to bring inside laborers who previously were exposed to the elements all day. The company's holistic approach paid off during a period of boom to bust.
In the later 1800s, the company was struggling a little bit. There was financial panics, and like every other company, we were affected by that. And they were on the verge of extinction. And one of the employees came to them and said, "I hear you're having some troubles. You don't have to pay me until you're back on your feet." And that message kind of spread in town, and one of the wealthier people in the community who had family members working for the company said, "I will lend you $10,000 so you can get through your payroll and so that you can keep going." Then the company made its payroll. The company had some money and started advertising the Red Delicious apple or the Delicious apple, and just kind of accelerated from there.
The Red Delicious apple, a horticultural icon and a Stark Brothers trademark variety. It came to the attention of one of 3 Stark grandsons who were running the company by the early 1890s. The apple, originally called the Hawkeye, was submitted to the first International New Fruit Fair. Clarence Stark began the competition to find a superior tasting apple. The winner by a country mile came from the Iowa farm of Jesse Hyatt. But because no one at the fruit show could figure out where the apple came from, Clarence Stark waited until the following year and sent invitations to growers to resubmit. The original winner was identified, and in 1893, Stark bought the tree, the rights, and renamed the apple the Stark Delicious. 2 decades later, the company bought the tree and rights to a sweet yellow apple from West Virginia and named it Golden Delicious. Stark Brothers Chief Production Officer Elmer Kidd.
Golden and Red Delicious were both chance seedlings. Somebody threw an apple core down and a seedling emerged, and 1 out of 1,000,000 times something happens, and it did in those two cases.
The discovery of those apples may have put Stark Brothers on the map, but the company's prominence in the industry was secured by Stark's discovery of a person. He was Luther Burbank, a brilliant horticulturalist who developed several hundred strains and varieties of fruits, ornamental flowers, and other plants. Clarence Stark traveled to California to see Burbank's experimental farm and his work on crossbreeding. Stark's purchase of a few of Burbank's fruits provided Burbank much-needed capital to continue his research. A collaboration began and continued until Burbank's death in 1926. Since then, Stark Brothers has carried the torch, creating hundreds of additional varieties of fruits and ornamentals.
We're standing in front of a newly planted field of rootstocks.
And you can't create fruit trees without them. Rootstocks are the tree's foundation, while the scions or shoots determine the type of fruit the trees will bear. That's where grafting comes in.
Our grafting crew has virtually no losses.
These workers are grafting future persimmon trees.
And when he places that graft together, he matches the cambial layers. The graft heals from the outside. As soon as he makes that graft, cells start dying on those cuts to be just like cutting your finger. The other gentleman's taking a product that was developed for the surgical industry. That's called parafilm. He's enclosing the entire sign and graft with parafilm, and then he's going to come back with a rubber band and wrap the union where the graft was made. In 3 weeks, this is what we expect to see. There's always a crop being sold and a crop being raised in this business.
That field of rootstocks we saw in the spring had made noticeable progress when we returned in August. Apple trees are typically shipped when they're 2 years old to wholesale and retail customers. In about 3 years, they'll start bearing fruit. It's a promise inscribed on the company logo. Stark trees bear fruit.
It's the part of the operation where we bring in from our greenhouse all of our potted material. We prep it for shipping, giving it its last dose of water so that it'll travel well in the box. And then it works its way down the line, picks up any fertilizer or other tools along the way, and gets popped in a box and is delivered by FedEx home delivery.
Today, more than 150 varieties of fruit, nut, and shade trees and berry and garden plants are offered by Stark Brothers. Since its beginnings, the company has delivered more than 500 million trees and plants across America. In its 200 years, Stark Brothers has faced and overcome a number of challenges. Obstacles like war, financial panics, the Great Depression, and in this century, a 500-year flood that threatened to wipe the company out. Stark Brothers endured it all, plus a couple of changes in ownership to become the world's oldest continuously operating nursery. And today, 60% of all the apples on the planet are descended from 2 Stark Brothers varieties, the Red Delicious and Golden Delicious apple.
There'll be no end to the apples that are in the grocery store.